Hello, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Casey. I'm a student at Northumbria University and I study psychology.
Oh, amazing. And can you briefly explain your heritage?
So I'm mixed. My dad's Surinamese, which is a country in the Caribbean, and then my mom's Indonesian and Jordan.
That's lovely. Can you please explain what your heritage means to you personally?
I think it means a lot. It's more because I was born in Rotterdam, and so there's a huge population of Surinamese people and Indonesian people, and there's a huge mix as well between the two cultures. And I think even in the food that I make, even though I live in England and we make sure to celebrate birthdays the traditional way and everything like that. So I think it means a lot, especially in terms of family values and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And how do you usually celebrate your heritage?
I think a lot through music. Through music and food, listening to traditional music, keeping in touch with what's going on in those countries as well. Okay. Stuff like that, keeping in touch with family as well, I think it's really important.
That's great. And have you celebrated your heritage since joining Northumbria University?
Not as much in Northumbria University, I think, because there isn't a big Surinamese population here, and I feel like a lot of people don't know about Suriname in general. A lot of people don't know about the country, so it's something that I do quite a bit with my family, yeah.
Amazing. And what about your culture do you particularly enjoy celebrating?
I do. I think because I'm so mixed, yeah. We just take bits and pieces from wherever we find it. Certain things from Dutch culture that I really enjoy and certain celebrations, and then there's certain things that I'll take from my dad's side of family and certain things from my mom's side. So I feel like I enjoy culture, but I enjoy the mixture of it more because I don't feel necessarily the pressures that come along with staying in one culture because I can just choose, around what I want to.
That's amazing. So from your dad's side, what do you do mostly?
So he's Surinamese, but I come from a very traditional Christian family, everything like that. So certain things certain ways of celebrate when I go back to Holland, I visit their church, stuff like that. So there's certain parts that I'll take from them, especially when it comes to birthdays, because we celebrated birthdays more in a Surinamese way, singing Surinamese songs, stuff like that, dancing. But on the other hand, my mom's obviously Indonesian, and I'm Muslim. And so there's certain things I'll take from there. My mom got married, we all wore Indonesian style clothes over Surinamese because, my mom's Indonesian. So that's the kind of mix that we do, It's very random.
I love it. That wouldn't be a boring day. That's amazing. And what motivates you to have pride in your culture and heritage?
I think it's important to understand your culture, to understand who you are as a person. My great-grandma, she passed, I think, a year or two ago, and it was so interesting. At her funeral, found out the plantation that originally we did come from, plantation in Suriname, and how the family lineage went from that point. And I think learning stuff like that, it says a lot about where you come from, and it makes you feel proud that my family went through that, and look where we are now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it makes me feel very proud to continue it. You're saying I want my kids to understand where we come from, and that even though you might have been through hardships in the past, you can get somewhere else. And so I think
amazing. And and how do you think we could celebrate cultural diversity at the university library?
I feel like maybe having a cultural day or something like that. I've been seeing that quite a bit. Some schools do that, have cultural days where everyone comes in traditional clothing or stuff like that. You maybe involved in that a little bit more. Because I do understand, I think in university everyone comes from somewhere else. Whilst in Newcastle as a whole, there's a certain population that's just going to be higher. So I feel like we've got Chinese New Year and stuff like that. But it would be nice to maybe do things specific to other countries as well. Some involvement in that throughout the year.
Amazing. Yeah. I agree with that. Are there any Black or Asian authors that inspire you?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Yes, there are. I don't remember everyone's names. There is a book called Makes Me Wanna Holler. I don't remember what the author's name is, but that book, really, really good book. It's about a story of a guy, he's just living his life, and it just really goes into daddy baby mama culture within America, and then he also experienced the Panther movement. So it really just looks at that. It's really interesting. That book, I think, God, I can't remember anyone's name right now. The Color Purple, obviously, great book. I think even though it's lovely to watch the movies, I think it's really important to read the books because it goes into a little bit more depth, like that. And I do love a bit of Malcolm X as well. Yeah.
I do as well. And you could recommend one, what book would it be?
One book. I think maybe, I have more than one, I think.
Okay, it's fine.
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Okay.
It really gives you multiple perspectives on slavery, which I think is interesting, because obviously you hear it from one side, especially if you do it through history, you learn about it in a very, what's called literal sense, this happened, these are statistics. But reading that book, it kind of a different perspective to like why some slaves stayed. You know, some people choose to stay on the plantation and why did certain people leave. So I think that's a really good book to read. I think Makes Me Wanna Holler is it's a really good look at, I feel like, things that are going on in the world right now. You know, that was called Black cultures right now and the way it affects people, and especially like from a male perspective as well, which I think is really interesting to read about. So I think those are 2 books that I would definitely recommend. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I'll be reading those and have a look. Thank you. And can you share any ideas on how the university library can celebrate and showcase diversity? I know you touched on that a bit, but could you elaborate more on how the library can be more diverse?
I feel like we've got the ACS, stuff like that. And I feel like that's, you know, nice and it's good to have that, but at the same time, there is going to be a larger, what I assume is larger African population than Caribbean population, you know, especially like you live in Newcastle and it just is like that. So I feel like maybe if the library, you know, at the time, maybe making a showcase about Nigerian culture or then Jamaican culture, you know, differences and maybe similarities, I feel like it would teach people a lot about other cultures, you know. And if they never move away from Newcastle, you're never really going to learn necessarily about Jamaican culture or about Surinamese culture. So I feel like just giving a highlight or spotlight on specific countries, you know, history would be nice.
Thank you for sharing. And has the university and university library made you feel welcome and have created a sense of belonging for you?
I think the Black Voices project, I think that was really impactful to me. Like, you know, that it's acknowledging that, you know, aren't that many Black voices, and it's really important to get that perspective, especially from our generation. I feel like that definitely made me feel like it's a good job, you know, acknowledging it and they're trying to improve it. You know, I feel like that's definitely made me want to be more involved in the library and made me be like, you know, better for students as well to get more involved in the library. I think that's the project.
I agree. And just additionally, based upon the conversation we've had and the questions we've asked, is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, there's very many things I want to discuss.
I
think I think it's quite important for, like I said, students to get involved, because I think ACS, even though it's great as an idea, definitely, and Black students need a space to go, I feel like inviting other students to kind of experience that as well will create a little bit more awareness. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like there is quite a big divide in Newcastle. I feel like Newcastle is predominantly a white place. You know, I feel like there are some people that do still have a quite narrow-minded view, shall we say? You know, showcasing that culture a little bit more in more open spaces. You know, where people maybe aren't as scared to go, because I feel like it could be quite scary to go to ACS, you know, as potentially a white person or a Chinese person that doesn't go with anyone else and just sit there. But I feel like once you have that more understanding, I feel like it's Newcastle, at least Northumberland University, might be a bit of a more welcoming place to go. Because I remember when I was looking at places to go, I was looking at Manchester, I was looking at London, I was not trying to stay in Newcastle. You know, I feel like that's where the culture is, that's where my people are going to be, you know what I mean? So I feel like maybe if there was a little bit more work done in showcasing Black culture, at least Black culture in Newcastle, you know, events that we have in Newcastle, stuff like that, like there's Portuguese events, you know, Poland events a lot, and stuff like, even like put a bit of a highlight on that and invite in other people to that might make it a little bit of a more attractive place to go.
Thank you so much. And just fun a bit, and one word, how do you describe the university library?
Let's go university. The simplest questions are the most difficult for me today. I think university library, it's such a blunt word, but like helpful. I feel like in different ways, they do a lot more than what I think people assume it does. You know, and like I first saw the library, to be fair, my first year I didn't know I would go to the library once at all. So I feel like, you know, that assumption that it's just books. It's just books, you're just here to study, you know, do anything more, anything less than that, you know, literally. I feel like in different ways. There's so many projects going on, you know, many things that the library knows about and that can help with. You know, I feel like people just aren't aware about it, but it's so useful, you know. I feel like applying it to like life, especially, you know, like if you're alone and you want to get more involved and you want to meet people, it's a great way to do it through the library. I feel like it's a really safe space.
Love that. And also one word to describe the Northumbria University as a whole. If you could use one word to describe the university.
Welcoming.
Okay.
I feel like I have not had like any experiences with students or staff, or like I feel like anytime I've had a problem, like even my tutor, like really open to helping, you know, actually trying to help. Like so many things. Like even the health support team here is amazing. You know, like they really on it, you know, active, and I think definitely it's a good university.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And we've come to the end of the interview.